soon as it's started. Okay, and we're now live.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll repeat this again. Good evening, councillors and any members of the public. Welcome to the Environmental Excellence Panel for the 28th of January 2021. I would just like to advise everybody present, this is a public meeting and it's been live streamed on the Council's YouTube channel. Might I remind members that they should follow the general etiquette of remote meetings and that their microphones should be on mute to avoid background noise, unless invited to speak. It would be useful to say you would like to speak if you would raise your hand or put the item in the chat, please. I'll now go over to James, the committee officer. Will you please conduct the roll call, and would councillors please indicate if they have any declarations of interest and what those interests are. Over to you, James.
Councillor Brennan, do you have any interests?
I'm present and no declarations.
Councillor Britcher?
Present and no declarations of interest.
Councillor Fisher?
Fine. Present and nothing to declare, thank you.
Councillor Kelly?
Present, no declarations of interest.
Councillor Lawrence?
Present, no declarations of interest.
Councillor Leggett?
Present and no declarations.
Councillor Nerdon?
Present, no declarations.
Councillor Pratton?
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Ward?
Present, no declarations.
And the other members present, Councillor Catchpole?
Present, no declarations of interest.
And Councillor Mancini Boyle?
Present, no declarations.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, James. Do we have any apologies for absence and any substitute, please?
No, we don't have any apologies, Chairman.
Okay, that's lovely. Thank you very much. We next go on to item 3, the minutes of the previous meeting of last year on the 26th of November. I refer the members to those minutes. Could you have a check of accuracy and any matters arising? Would you please confirm that these are true and accurate, and any alterations you would require, please? Okay, could I have a
Chairman, I propose that the minutes are accepted.
Yeah, thank you very much. Do I have a seconder? Yeah, John Fisher there. James?
Yes.
Would you raise your hand to accept the minutes, please?
Appears to be unanimous from all the members.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll now go on to the next part. Actually, I've just in addition, I'd just like to put in between this. I've had a talk with the acting director, Nick Howard, and he would like to give us a brief update on the progress of the environmental strategy. So if you would like to go over to you, Nick, please.
Chairman, thank you very much and good evening, everyone. I'll be joining you briefly on camera. I'll be present throughout the meeting if there's any further questions, but really just wanted to provide you with a little bit of progress news, indication of momentum on the environmental strategy following the session on the 26th of November, where, as the minutes confirm, you received an update on some readily deliverable projects. And we have Abigail Langley as our National Graduate Apprentice with us, who of course you've met before, to provide some of that to you. Just a couple of items to brief you on, just to let you know on progress ahead of another report into your next panel meeting. Firstly, on the role of the environmental coordinator, which of course is very significant, that role will drive the environmental strategy. We've put a lot of time and effort into making sure that that will attract the right candidate. I'm pleased to confirm to you that we expect that advertisement to commence imminently, and I would expect and hope that that's going to be within the next couple of weeks. So you should see that go live. we would be hopeful of attracting a really good caliber of candidates with the right range of skills who will be able to network, work with local communities, but also drive projects forward for you. So we're very hopeful for that. So that's news to come for you for the next meeting. Now, on one or two items that we briefed you on previously, we have been doing some work to scope in more detail the electric vehicle charging points, looking first at council premises, of course, because that's where we have the best knowledge of the land concerned. And clearly there's a bit to that. There are several moving parts. Firstly, to identify preferred suppliers for vehicle charging infrastructure. Secondly, to then just make sure that we identify in contractual terms and energy terms that we've got the right contract provision. There's a finance element to it, and then of course the management of our land and the coordination with any contractors. So there are a few parts to that, but I'm pleased to say that work is progressing in that infrastructure area. So we would expect to come out with a project plan and be able to report back to you on the way that would go forward. The next part is about tree planting. Now there's a bit to tell you here, and I'll pass you over to Abigail Langley, who's been very busy involved in driving this forward for you to provide you with a few points of update. Abigail.
Thanks, Nick. So since we last spoke to you, as Nick said, we've been working on getting the ad out for the environmental coordinator. And when this happens, we can properly get the tree target moving and give it the attention it deserves. So in the meantime, a lot of work has been going into this tree target. So we have a few updates to share with you. So after hearing all your enthusiasm and comments last meeting, we've been working closely with NCC to establish the best way of going about this and any potential funding opportunities. So an invaluable part of our discussions so far at this sort of scoping phase has been the tree wardens. So John Fleetwood, the coordinator, has been sharing his enthusiasm and agreed to plant 10% of BDC's target. So this is about 13,000 trees. And this will be hopefully using the tree warden's tree nursery. And leading on from your comments about wanting to see heritage trees, John's had a really exciting idea about creating a pamphlet about a potential heritage trail. So this would be from existing heritage trees across Broadland, where members could contribute to this by planting a tree along the trail as part of the target. And this would be a chance to create a bit of living history. And so really exciting ideas developing there. Another opportunity that's presented itself to us seems to be parish councils. So for example, Helston, among others, are beginning their Help Green Helston project, which is also really encouraging. We've also been doing our research around best practice for managing these trees, so once they're in the ground, which I know was a key concern last meeting. So too many schemes seem to promise everything and then fail to deliver a successful and self-sustaining scheme. And we're obviously really keen that ours is not one of them, as I'm sure you are. So we've been engaging with NCC in how they're going about management and also collecting the expertise of the tree wardens. So we're going to accumulate this best practice research and then judge its suitability for Broadland. And then as soon as our environmental coordinator is in post, this work can take off. And then something else that's become really obvious is that working closely with the community will be beneficial in more ways than just promoting community values and increasing environmental engagement. Because if residents are encouraged to take ownership over their trees and the natural assets in their surroundings, then management may become relatively natural. And so this is something we're going to look into further to sort of create the sense of ownership around the trees. And this will be most effective in places such as schools where the children take ownership over their own little tree projects. However, this obviously won't be the same for everywhere. So it may be the case that we work on the basis of finding planting opportunities and then performing suitability analysis and then tailoring the management to this. So overall, we are really encouraged and excited with all the work that's been developing on this. And we want you to be assured that we are putting in all the groundwork for the new environmental coordinator, so that when they're in post, better progress will be made and at a faster rate.
So, Chairman, there's one last point to brief you on, but I hope that reassures you that even before we get an environmental coordinator in post, clearly there's a good deal of work that's going on connecting those different parts of the environmental strategy with the broader aims that we've discussed in the panel sessions recently. The last point I wanted to just pick up with you is really just to let you know something that's coming. So for the next meeting, we expect to bring to you a paper which will start the process, which is in the delivery plan for 2021, of reviewing our policy and enforcement tools and tactics for fly tipping in particular, but the broader environmental crime. So we expect to bring you a paper on that for next time, a bit of a baselining paper, and it will set the tone for where the tactics go into the new financial year. So work's going on that in that at the moment. Gentlemen, I hope that's helpful. We wanted to give you, as I say, just a bit of a verbal briefing on some of the things that are going on in the meantime. Thank you. Thank you very much, Nick, and a special thank you to you, Abigail. You're doing fine work. Keep it up. I've
Chairman,
a request for a comment from Trudy. Would you like to?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to mention about the charging posts. Are you linking in with economic development? Because I know they've got a particular project at the moment as well. So I'm just wondering if you're tying up with them with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I referred to the scoping work and preferred supplier work that's going on, absolutely, that's that work is being done within economic development. So that's one and the same. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Leggett, please.
I just want to say thank you, and thank you to Abigail, because it's great to hear that you have achieved so much since our last meeting. So well done.
Okay, do I have anybody else who would like any comments, please? Okay, we'll move on to the next item, which is recycling initiatives update, and the lead officers for this, Michaela Beaumont, Nagin Noorani, Lisa Fountain and Victoria Parsons. So I'll hand over to the officers for your report, please.
Thank you, Chair. I have prepared a bit of a presentation for this report, so I'm not sure if we'll be able to bring that up on the screen, please. Oh, lovely. Thanks, Jessica. Okay, is it all right if we just go straight on to the next slide, please? Brilliant. Thank you. So good evening, everyone. So at the panel meeting back in October, we presented a number of options for development into proposals to help towards Council's aspiration to achieve a 60% recycling rate. So while your recommended options included the potential for extending food waste collections and incentivising garden waste subscriptions, they also looked at how we could bring about behaviour change and how we can utilise technology through the use, for example, through a text messaging service. Is that okay if we go on to the next slide, please? Thank you. So initially, we went back and started developing an action plan for these proposals. We also reviewed the recycling and residual waste figures for the past 10 years up to 2020, which are displayed here. So as you can see from the table on the left, in terms of the recycling figures, the rates for food and garden waste and dry recycling have pretty much swapped over within that 10 years. However, the overall broadline rate has stayed broadly consistent in the high 40 to 50%. And is currently just under 50%. And this means we've probably got a bit of work to do in terms of bringing that recycling rate up to 60%. In terms of residual waste, which you can see in the right-hand table, you can see it's actually reduced slightly from the beginning of the last decade, even where we had a high between about 2012 and 2015. So this increase then might be due to tighter markers, meaning that more material is rejected at the MRF sorting facility. So just moving on now to sort of a bit more up to date, in terms of the impact on the pandemic on waste and recycling rates, particularly increases in cardboard. So anecdotally, we are hearing there has been a shift towards more waste because people are at home more and they're having a lot more home deliveries. However, we do need to look closely at the data as it becomes available to understand what the trends are and if it means increases in residual waste or recycling, if it's being collected by us or if it's going to a recycling centre. And as we'll come to, it's also an opportunity for us to do some really targeted behaviour change work. And just to add to that as well, due to some capacity in our waste contract, We're about to commence a slight extension to our food waste collection service. So we're adding about 1,700 households to the service. So this is expected to begin in April this year, and will focus on some properties that are adjacent to current rounds. So the communications around this expansion are another opportunity for us to really target that behaviour change as a result of COVID-19. Is that okay if we go on to the next slide, please? Thanks. So based on the data that we have for 1920, we did some modelling on what would be needed to achieve that 60% recycling rate. In terms of actual weight, and assuming that there's no change in the residual waste figures, recycling would have to increase by just over 5,000 tonnes. So this is an increase on the 1920 figure of about 21%. And it's felt that one of the ways to achieve this would be through an increase in compostable waste, so food and garden waste. And within section 3 of the report, we've highlighted some high-level costings, particularly around revenue costings for food waste. So, for example, could be about £577,000. And also if free garden waste collections are introduced, which could see foregone revenue of just under £1.5 million a year. And this does also not include capital costs for supplying additional bins. Is that okay if we go on to the next slide, please? So just to broaden that picture out a bit, the resources and waste strategy set by the government sets out a clear direction for the intended future of recycling collections, in that the government has its own target for achieving a 65% recycling rate by 2035. It also aims to introduce more producer responsibility and consistency in recycling in England, particularly around food and garden waste collections. And it's also looking at reviewing the current recycling credit system. So although we heard yesterday that the Environment Bill is going to be moved over to the next session of Parliament, we also had the publication of the Waste Management Plan for England. So this plan pulls in all the strategies and policies that relate to waste, including the resources and waste strategy, and will be supplemented by a waste prevention programme for England. So within this, the government have restated their commitment to introducing the consistency in recycling measures, and new burdens funding for local authorities to implement. The consultations on these are still due to go ahead in 2021. And also just to note, the new burdens funding isn't retrospective, and so wouldn't apply to any service implemented before the planned 2023 date. So if we can just go on to the next slide, please. So with this in mind, and until we know more from central government, there is still work we can do to increase recycling and reduce residual waste. And we're proposing the work streams outlined in section 4 to take that forward, which can be broadly themed under the headings you can see. Although some of the more on-the-ground activities will need to be assessed in relation to current restrictions. So to give some examples, as I said earlier, we have a great opportunity for a really focused campaign looking at new behaviours as a result of COVID-19. So this includes the potential for a composition audit, so we can really understand what people are putting in their bins at the moment, and then developing some clear communications based on that. We'd also like to look at contamination in communal and individual bins. So reducing contamination helps to decrease rejected material at the MRF, increase our recycling credits and the recycling rate. Encouraging household participation through the development of a survey will also help us to identify barriers for breaking and opportunities for bringing our work forward. We're also seeking to do some engagement work with the Broadland and South Norfolk YABs, and we have a meeting set up with the young commissioners to look at their own priorities on reducing waste and environmental toolkit. And we would also like to follow up on a previous session with the young commissioners and the portfolio holder. And we'd also like to look at reducing residual waste, and are proposing to develop some pilot schemes, potentially looking at smaller residual waste bins or 3 weekly collections. If we were to pilot these, we would also need to look at what we can do to facilitate. So for example, having food waste collections already in place, or for rural areas, considering provision for something like bokashi boxes, which help to compost down food waste. If we can go to the next slide, please. So in terms of next steps, we'd like to finalise our action plan, including clear sets of resources, measures, outcomes. And I think we also need to include interdependencies, such as the waste procurement, the transformation projects, and also linking with the environmental strategy. We want to make sure that our voice continues to be heard. So within that, we'll be responding to the consultation set by government concerning requirements for consistency in recycling collections and new burdens funding. And then finally, and outside of any proposals that we'd like to take forward for approval, we're proposing to prepare an update report to be presented to the panel in autumn 2021. So this would detail progress on our own plans locally, but also update progress nationally, the national plans for consideration and consistency in recycling. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Victoria. Councillors, do you have any questions or comments to make on Victoria's presentation? Karen, I can see your hand straight away if you'd like to start, please.
Firstly, obviously, thank you for that very interesting and helpful report and the work that's gone into it. I was wondering whether in some of the behavioural change stuff, whether you were looking at sort of incentivization techniques. I know there was an example from New Zealand which looked at kind of competitive sort of giving people stars and being able to assess whether, you know, how well identifying a means to identify people in the community that had got really were really good at recycling and highlighting them in a way sort of with stickers and things like that. I'm not saying that, you know, something needs to be translated like that completely, but is there a means by which you're exploring different incentivizations that could work within a rural context that we have here and that you would like to experiment with, given we're out of a lockdown and kind of COVID situation, obviously, but is that also on the cards at the moment, or are you just looking at kind of other types of behavior change?
Thank you. I can take that one. I think incentivization and looking at the little bit of competitive aspect of behavior change is definitely on the cards, I'd say. It's something that we've noticed when we've attended webinars or when we worked with JUMP last year. Gamification and the competitive aspect of behavior change is definitely important, and it works. So finding out how to do that in the context that we do a project. I think one way would be to make any project contextualized to the local area. So giving them information on how they're doing in relation to their neighborhood or something like that. So yeah, it's definitely in there. Yeah.
Thank you, Nagin. Nigel, I believe you've got a comment.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, a couple of questions. One, first of all, regarding local recycling centres, my nearest being Strumpshaw. The recycling that is carried out there, is that classed as Broadland recycling or is that Norfolk County Council? And the second question, if we are looking at a curbside waste electrical collection, is this yet another vehicle running around? It seems slightly bizarre that if I've got a mobile phone, for example, i.e. a very small item, that I've got to leave it out and the vehicle's got to come round? Or are we going back to the stage where we had collections at local towns and villages, such as we had something like 18 months ago in Acle? Please, thank you, Chair.
The household, sorry, I can hear an echo. I'm not sure if anyone else can. The household waste recycling centres are county council, and the curbside electrical collection would be a cage on the existing vehicles. Simon.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So where would, if we had something to dispose of, be it a mobile phone, totally different laptop, toaster, whatever, where would we leave it so it's collected?
Other councils that collect small electrical items sometimes ask for them to be put in a bag on top of the bin, so it would be on the same collection as one of your curbside bins, and then they grab it and put it in the cage.
So would that be the grey bin? Or...
I'm not sure if it would be on the same collection as the recycling or residual, but it would be on one of the same. It might be on both. I'm not sure, but it would be, yeah, not a separate collection.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thanks for that.
Can I just come quickly in on that? Interestingly, I had a discussion with Chris from Veolia today, and they're looking to be able to do a short trial on WE collection at no cost to the council in the immediate future. It's only a trial, so it won't cover the whole of district, I don't think, but they're looking to introduce that, I say, within a couple of months or so. So we'll be able to answer some of those questions as to which collection day it's on, etc. But as I say, as Nagin said, it won't be an additional vehicle when the new contract comes in. It will be part of it will be a cage. She said a cage on the existing vehicles. Sorry,
Chair. Can I just come back on that? So if it's anything which might be described as small electricals at the existing recycling centres, would we be able to put those out for recovery, such as electrical cables, as I said, electrical devices?
Yes, I think small. I think the guidance of what you can take back to a shop and ask them to take it for you is about the size of a toaster. It says the size of a toaster. So anything that's smaller than a toaster, they'll collect on the curbside. You can also take it back to a shop, of course, when if you're buying a new toaster. Then if that shop's selling more than £100,000 worth of electrical equipment a year, if you use somebody like that, then they have a statutory requirement to take that back from you now. That's not been widely publicised, but that's just come into legislation this year.
Yes, thank you, Simon. I'm aware of that. It just concerns me if I sorry to hinge around toaster, but if I buy a new toaster and get it delivered by Amazon, other online retailers are available. Obviously, I don't want to be driving somewhere to dispose of it if it can be collected from outside.
Okay. Is that it, Nigel?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think I've made my
Councillor
point.
Ward, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Just an idea. When I was in Canada a few years ago, they had a system there in the area I was in, where during the summer months, once a fortnight in early evening, everybody in the neighbourhood would put out anything they didn't want, electricals, furniture, etc., on the front of their drive. And the whole neighbourhood would go out. It was a real social occasion. Everybody walked around the local streets and sort of helped themselves to anything they wanted. So that was a very good way of recycling things. And I wonder if it's something we ought to think about here.
Thank you. That's a great idea. We'll note that down. It's like a garage sale for the street.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. Councillors, do we have any more comments, please, or questions? Councillor Leggett.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to add to John Wall's statement. I've seen that happen in Australia, and it's really quite interesting to see what's left out and then what sort of gets picked up and moved on. It's fascinating and useful, obviously. I just got one or two questions. The coming extra food waste bin collection. I'd just like to know how well that will be advertised, or when it will be advertised. I'm quite clear that some people in my division, my ward, will be very interested in it. So,
yeah, I'm happy to take a jab at that. Veolia will be sending leaflets to residents to let them know that they'll be added to the scheme 2 weeks before they're added to the round, and then when they are delivered their containers, inside will be some liners, a letter, and then other materials to help them understand the scheme better. We haven't gone beyond that.
Right, I just think it would be interesting. I don't know if fellow councillors think the same, that we could at least do a bit of publicity to those areas before they actually get something through the door. But I don't know what other people think. I've got You talk about several things in the paper that in the Norfolk Waste Partnership are doing. Are you working quite closely with them? I was thinking especially when they are looking to see the reasons why some districts or some councils have very high recycling rates.
We are working closely with them in terms of, we've had a meeting with them and other recycling officers in the county to share ideas. So we haven't had a follow-up from that meeting yet, but, and I think Simon has, I don't know if you've been to a meeting, but they have a comms plan that they've shared with us. So we're involved in that respect, but we haven't developed any plans with them further than that I know of.
Yes, I was going to say I have seen the comms plan, and I don't know if I quite caught what you said about the survey. You were talking about a survey, and what's that going to cover?
So one of the things we're proposing is a survey for residents. So that's really about sort of identifying any barriers that people may be experiencing in terms of their waste, and sort of understanding what needs to go where, or any barriers that they have in sort of taking waste to recycling centres and things, or what they would like to see in terms of their recycling collections going forward in the future.
I just thought that might conflict with the procurement, where presumably we have a specification already.
Yep, that's a good point. So yeah, that's certainly something that we consider going forward.
And finally, have you done any work with the norfolkrecycles.com, their website? Because about a year ago, they were planning to make it easy for people to find how they could recycle things, i.e. your sofa or your dining room table, as opposed to just scrapping it.
We have, so someone at County Council runs that website, and we have worked with her to get the infographics on there. And I think she was working on something called the Bin Genie, and it is on there. I'm not sure what her plans are with it, but we are in contact with her, so we could, yeah, if we would like to have a page or post something, I'm sure we could speak to her.
I think that would be worth investigating, because they had some great plans earlier.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you very much.
Okay, I've got Councillor Pruiton. I know you're going to have to leave shortly, followed by Councillor Fisher. So if you'd like to carry ahead, please, Sue.
Yes, it's just carrying on from what you were just saying about the extra 1,700 households that can come on stream in 2021 in April for the waste collection. How does one get nominated? You say Veolia will leave them the bins, etc. How do they get into the chain? Because I'm helping look after Brundle at the moment, Brundle Ward, and we've got some new houses in one of the little parishes that's beside the road, and they beside the existing route, sorry, and they want to be included. And how do they get into that loop?
So the expansions are based on Veolia's capacity, and it's based on their rounds and the vehicles that are used for the rounds. So it might be that your road is next to a road that gets the service, but they might be serviced by a different vehicle, or they might have a different collection day. So they also have, because the food waste vehicles they have a daily limit, I believe, if Simon wants to jump in. So they have based the expansion based on where the rounds are and where they have a daily capacity to increase.
But how do these new houses get nominated to Veolia?
Veolia looks at their rounds, so the houses don't get nominated. They look at their existing rounds and their existing capacity to increase and see which roads kind of tack on to that capacity, if that makes sense.
So they're just as they drive around, they say, there's some new houses there, we can perhaps expand. Is that what you're saying?
Not new houses, but if the round like if the round has houses that aren't on the food waste scheme, and then they have capacity for 200 more houses that day, that road might get added. Simon, do you have any more insight?
But the case I have in question, it's only 2 or 3 houses. They are new, and they just are irked that the van just won't call on them. They've asked, and the lorry says no, we can't. But I wondered if this would be a similar sort of opportunity.
Properties.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not sure about.
Yeah, we'll need to check that. I mean, the 1700 house expansion is basically a fill-ins on existing rounds because they've got capacity on the day and things like that. But we'll need to check those out. If you could let us have the details, we'll check.
I will indeed. Who shall I send them to?
If you send them to Pete Leggett, he was trying to get on the call. Unfortunately, he couldn't get on. So, but if you send them to Pete Leggett, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Fisher, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Basically, just that I support everything that's been suggested. From the and the textile separate collections, I think that's good. I think if Veolia offer a pilot, then we should grab it and say yes, let's have a pilot. When we're looking at waste reduction and we're looking at smaller bins, I think that's a good idea. We're looking at 3 weekly collections. I think that's an excellent idea. I would certainly support a pilot on that. And in fact, I would volunteer my particular ward to take part in that pilot. If you're looking for any specific area to take part, I'm always keen to have my area take part in any new initiative for recycling. And I have put surveys around and talked to people about whether they feel a 3 weekly collection would work, and I think the majority of people actually would go with that. So I'd certainly support all of that, and the small electrical we collections, and I would suggest you try and add textile into that. So yeah, generally all very 100% support of what you're proposing. I know that there was mention of contamination, and yeah, that is an issue, and I believe that's one of the factors that's prevented our figures from actually increasing the way they should have done, because I think the way the contamination is judged and sorted and implemented, I think impacts on our recycling figures. And I'd like to see a bit of work done with the MRF to try to and probably the Waste Partnership to try to reduce contamination across Norfolk, because I think although we are very good at trying to contact and deal with contamination, we don't necessarily get the benefits of that at the MRF. But yeah, generally all splendid, and I'm happy to have my area pilot and try absolutely anything. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fisher. Jamie, I gather you wish to make a comment.
Sorry, Chair, you caught me on the hop there. I was expecting Simon to go first. My only contribution was to say, firstly, thank you to Negin and Victoria for such a thorough piece of work, and also thank you for the really positive contributions of the panel this evening as well. I think my own observation would be that the council have and commendably set a really ambitious target around recycling in advance of what the government are going to oblige of us latterly anyway, and I think it's really positive to see a real range of different options in this paper that we can now take away and explore and form into an action plan, some of which will be relatively quick to deliver, relatively quick wins and relatively uncontentious, some of which will take longer to work through the system and will take bigger, bolder, more courageous decisions. But I think in an effort to meet that 60% target, it's really great to have a number of different avenues that we can explore. So really great piece of work, and really excited to see how this evolves over the coming weeks and months. Thank you all.
Thank you, Jamie. Absolutely agree with your comments. Simon, please.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to come back on John's comment about contamination and give you a little bit of, I'd actually written it down before, but he beat me to it, just to give you a little bit of the example. And I can't remember how many tons Victoria said we would need to get to the 60%, sorry, but we put last year, from October to September, we put 12,458 tonnes through the MRF, of which 2010, 16% of those were rejected as contamination. So if you can just see, if you were able to reduce the contamination in those, we'd be nearly halfway to our target. So contamination makes a big impact. It also costs us money as well, because we have to pay about I can't remember, about £15 a tonne on top of the normal fee to dispose of those contaminated recycling materials. So that behavioural change and getting people to stop contamination is vital.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Councillors, do I have any more comments, please? No, thank you. We'll now go to the recommendations. We've got 3 recommendations here. James, show of hands, would that be acceptable for the recommendations?
It would, Chairman, yes.
Yeah, so we'll carry on ahead. So I'll take them as is the item in your notes at the moment. Recommendation 1, panel to support scoping of reduced residual waste work streams as outlined in section 4 that will contribute to increasing the council's recycling rate and are outside of the government proposals. Could I have a show of hands if you're willing to accept this recommendation, please?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and there should be another one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yes, that's unanimous, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much, councillors. We'll now go on to recommendation 2. Does the panel support commencement of behavioural change work streams as in section 4.2 that will contribute to increasing recycling rates, reducing residual tonnage and reduce contamination rates and are outside of the government proposals? Can I have a show of hands if you're in agreement with this proposal, please?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's carried, Chairman.
Thank you very much, councillors. And finally, item number 3, panel to note current situation and to support participation in the government's consultations to inform the consistency requirements of food and garden waste collections in preparation for introduction in 2023. Could I have a show of hands if you agree with the recommendation, please?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's carried unanimously, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much, councillors.
The Nerdon had his hand up, yes. That's unanimous.
Yes, we will now go to the exclusion to the press and public.
Can I just correct that? Sorry.
Sorry, Grant,
yeah, I just wanted to say I didn't vote on that, so it wasn't unanimous.
Oh, I thought you had your hands up, so that's an abstention.
Okay, that's noted. Thank you, Councillor Nerdon. We'll now go on to item 5, and this requires the exclusion of the press and public. I gather, Jessica, you need to stop the live streaming with this one. So I read out the exclusion notes to this one. I move that the press and public be excluded from the meeting for the remaining item of business because otherwise information which is exempt information by virtue of paragraph 3 of part 1, schedule 12A of the Local Government Act of 1972 as amended by the Local Government Access to Information Variation Order 2006 would be